Today, we're looking at two American legends, the Ford Mustang and the Chevy Camaro. We'll peek into the technical evolution of these iconic cars to see why America loves these cars, even down to today. We'll also see some of the best model years and the worst. So hop in and let's go for a ride. Did you know that the Ford Mustang is the best-selling two-door sports car in the world? The Mustang has been in continuous production since 1964, going through 6 generations. Its fierce, muscular looks, deep roar, and the way it drives, everything screams power. And you can see why it's the longest Ford in production ever. In the early 1960s, Lee Iacocca was Ford's VP and general manager, and he envisioned a new sporty car for the young American market. Ford started developing the concept of a shoestring budget in quick time. They based the new car concept on the compact Ford Falcon. And in 1964, Ford introduced the Mustang at the World's Fair in New York. Ford thought they'd sell 100,000 units in year one, but on day one alone, they sold 22,000 Mustangs. Thus started the Mustang mania. Little did they know that in year one, they'd end up selling 4 times more than they estimated, and Mustang would popularize a new genre of automobiles known as pony cars. The original Mustang was made using many components from the Falcon. Ford did this intentionally in order to make the car available at very low cost. The listing price of the first Mustang coupe was under $2,400. That's a bit over $20,000 in today's monetary value. So you can see how affordable it was in its day. In the meantime, Chevrolet took notice. They saw America's love for the Mustang and started developing a new car concept, codenamed Panther. In 1966, GM held a live press conference. Chevrolet general manager Pete Estes announced a new car concept and revealed the name, Camaro. The press went wild. The story goes that the press asked Chevy product managers what a Camaro was and was told that it was a small, vicious animal that eats Mustangs, and so the competition was on. Chevrolet recognized that their compact, sporty car, the Corvair, with its rear engine design, was declining in sales and popularity. So they decided the Camaro would have the same conventional front engine configuration as the compact Chevy 2 Nova and share many of the Nova components. The Camaro was a hit. The base price was $2,466 and pretty comparable to the Mustang. Chevy sold almost 221,000 Camaros the first year, which is less than half of the Mustang's year one sales. During the first generation, Chevy offered many engine options. The Camaro's base engine started with a 3.8-liter inline straight-six engine, with the max option of a 6.5-liter V8. Not long after, Chevy offered a Rally Sport Edition in '67, which had a 4.9-liter V8 engine. The Camaro's large engine displacement did not go unnoticed. Ford followed suit, a Mustang with a 6.4-liter V8 that produced 335 horsepower. To install the larger engine, Ford increased the length and width of the car. That's how Mustang started getting bigger and heavier. Each year it was growing in size, weight, and muscle. By 1973, the Mustang was 1,200 pounds heavier than the very first Mustang. In the meantime, the second generation Camaro was having a rocky start, but it would actually become one of the most successful generations. The generation of Camaros were wider and lower in height. In 1974, Chevy added aluminum bumpers to the front and rear. In contrast, the second generation Mustang then went on a weight loss program. It looked very little like the first generation. The generation was originally based on the Ford Pinto. It was smaller and lighter with a 4-cylinder engine to counter rising gas prices. Ford also discontinued the convertible version. The Mustang II was presented as an upscale economy car. Then, as the oil crisis was ending, Americans started returning to large cars, and Ford started offering the Mustang II with a 4.9-liter V8 engine option. Then came the third generation Mustang. It was built on the Fox platform. Cars from the first half of this generation came with a front end that was tilted back with 4 rectangular headlights known as the 4 Eyes. For the second half of this generation, the front end featured rounded Ford Taurus styling with flush-mounted composite headlights and a sleek nose without grille. In 1983 saw the return of the Mustang convertible after a 9-year hiatus. Meanwhile, the third generation Camaro came with an all-new architecture, contemporary front suspension, and rack and pinion steering. During this time, America saw the first Camaro hatchback body. This generation also saw the first Camaros with modern fuel injection, and also the first Camaros to be offered with a 4-cylinder engine. Then Ford did a major redesign on the fourth generation Mustang. America saw a jelly bean shape with some first generation elements, and also a comeback with the traditional pony grille emblem and side scoops. The basic Mustang offered a 3.8-liter V8 and a 5-speed manual transmission. A 4-speed automatic came as an option. Ford boosted the performance of the Mustang GT with a 5-liter V8. This generation of Mustangs also came with bold, vivid colors like bright yellow, greens, purple, and metallic hues. Meanwhile, the fourth generation Camaros were much more sharper and dramatic than before. But competing Mustangs were lighter and more powerful. So Chevy added a 275 horsepower LT1 small block engine that was 60 horses more powerful than the competing fourth generation Mustang. But ultimately, the fourth generation Camaro saw declining in sales, and sadly, Chevy stopped producing the Camaro in 2002. And Ford went for more dramatic muscle. The fifth generation Mustang has more squarish and even more retro styling. The front grille and headlight placement resembled earlier models. The first half of this generation, the Mustang featured a 4-liter V6, 4.6-liter V8, and 4.V8 or a 5.4-liter supercharged V8. Transmissions included a 5 or 6-speed manual or 5-speed automatic. The second half of this generation saw a facelift and better aerodynamic. One of the striking features was the sequential taillights. The fifth generation Mustang came in just in time to greet the new fifth generation Camaro, which emerged from its 8-year hiatus. That's because Chevy noticed Mustang's retro redo, so the Camaro made a comeback with the new fifth generation. It was offered with the LS3 engine, which took the base power of the SS models to over 400 horsepower. The fifth generation also became well known because of its role in the Transformers movies. Then Mustang left the earlier retro style and shifted to a more futuristic European look. The sixth generation came with a fully independent rear suspension as standard equipment. This generation saw the first Mustang to be sold globally. It came with 4 main engine options. 2018 was a milestone year for the Mustang. That year, Ford made its 10 millionth Mustang. They also started selling Mustangs with the 10-speed automatic transmission and the EcoBoost turbocharged 4-cylinder engine instead of a V6. Not long afterwards, Ford announced the 2020 Mustang Mach-E, which was a new 4-door electric crossover. Ford also introduced 2020 Shelby GT500 as the most powerful Mustang ever made with 760 supercharged horsepower. Meanwhile, Camaro 2 is currently in its 6th generation. These are lighter, stronger, and more powerful than their predecessors. It's built on the same architecture as the Cadillac ATS, and almost everything under the hood is new. This generation includes the most powerful Camaro ever. The ZL1 with the 6.2-liter LT4 V8 engine with 650 horsepower and 650 pound-feet of torque. Both the Mustang and the Camaro have been classic American icons that have been relatively affordable for the average American. But each has seen good years and bad. There are definitely better model years than others, and some models have received consumer complaints worth noting. So, if you want a reliable used Mustang or Camaro, which model year should you consider and which should you avoid? If you're looking for a used Mustang, some of the best models include 2011, 2014, and 2019 in terms of value, performance, and overall reliability rating. But there are some model years you'll want to be careful. For example, the Mustang 2015 was the last redesign before the 2020 version. Unfortunately, the Consumer Reports reliability rating for the 2015 model is rather low. Ford also did 7 recalls on the 2015 Mustang, which isn't that little. Examples of problems for that year include door latches opening while the car is moving, as well as fuel leaks that could lead to serious fire. In terms of customer complaints, Mustang owners complained the most about the 2006 model year. The most common complaint was regarding water leaking into the interior, usually around 65,000 miles on the odometer. It's not a safety issue, but understandably an irritating one. Another common complaint from owners is corrosion on the hood, and also the paint on the hood blistering, usually around 50,000 miles. The average cost to fix this is between $970 and $1,200. But the worst and more serious complaint with the 2006 model year has been about the transmission failing at 65,000 miles or so. In general, a common occurrence that Mustang owners have reported includes squeaking noises while turning the steering wheel. The problem is due to the outer tie rods. When they wear out and need replacement. Repair costs for something like that can be under $200. Another common failure is the magnet to the camshaft falling out, causing damage to nearby synchronizers. This is a relatively relatively cheap fix around $100. On the average, this seemed to happen about 110,000 miles for most Mustangs. If you're looking to buy a used Camaro, some of the most reliable models include the 2013, 2015, and 2016. These Camaros scored well on reliability ratings. The 2016 Camaro was mentioned because it's a complete redesign. Its engines were made to be more powerful and efficient. Surprisingly, one of the Camaro's least reliable model is the year 2020. That year received one of the lowest reliability scores, according to Consumer Reports. The biggest problem with the 2020 Camaro is poor visibility and also lack of comfort, especially with the limited back seat space and small headroom. Owners complained that there were too many blind spots and rear-facing visibility was virtually non-existent. Another major issue was lack of automatic emergency braking system. In general, the most common complaint reported by Camaro owners is the car not starting. Evidently, the ignition lock cylinder is the cause. The steering column has several wires that are prone to fraying and disables the car's ability to start, but this can be fixed by replacing the ignition lock cylinder and the keys. Another common problem is leaking water pump. This can cost more to replace, but you should get this done as soon as possible. Otherwise, you can damage the engine. Most Camaro owners who had this problem said it happened around 80,000 miles. There is no doubt that the Ford Mustang and Chevrolet Camaro are legendary. Both were born in Detroit, and both are stunning, powerful cars with a long history. Tell me, what's your pick? Please comment below on which is your favorite and why. If you like this episode, subscribe to my channel. Thanks for your support.